Okay, so here's another method of organizing and presenting our data to make it a little bit easier to digest. It's called a frequency distribution, or you could call it a frequency table. Distribution makes it sound a little more involved than it really is. It's really very simple. What we've got here is some, again, meaningless data. Might be number of cars your family has, or number of siblings in your family, or anything like that, number of pets. And we've got a fairly small number of responses. We've only got about 5 or 6 different responses here, and a fair number of each of the responses. So it's not like just one of this, one of that, one of the other, like we may have seen before. So what we're going to do here is we're going to list our response and whatever that stands for. That's going to be our label. We're going to have 3 columns here in this table. The first one is going to be what the response was. So we've got 1, we've got 2, we've got 3, we've got 5, we've got 6, and we've got 7. My opinion, we don't need to list the ones that don't show up here. And you'll see in a minute that that's appropriate for when we do non-numeric data also, when we do qualitative. Right here we've got quantitative, here we'll have qualitative. How many times does 1 show up in our data? 1, 2, 3. So there's 3 1s, and that's the number of those responses. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 2s. There's 2 3s, a single 5, 3 6s, and a single 7. All right, so how many times does 1 show up? 3 times. How many times 2 show up? 5 times, etc. Very easy to follow from that. I apologize for not leaving a little more room here, but down at the bottom we do want to have a row for total. So that is still part of this guy here. We got 3 plus 5 is 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. There's a total of 15 there. And I think we probably want to separate that from the rest of the data too, so that it doesn't just look like another entry. Okay, that is the frequency distribution. How frequently did this thing show up? This frequently, this many times. The relative frequency distribution is not how much did it show up, but what percentage of the time did it show up. And that's just going to be not a whole new table. It's just going to be another column on this table. So we're going to have the percentage here. And it's real easy to calculate the percentage. All we have to do is divide the number by how many there were. So if we divide, I got a calculator over here, not doing this in my head. If I divide 3 by 15, I'm going to get 0.2. Move the decimal point 2 places, and that's going to give me 20%. So 20% of the responses were 1. 5 divided by 15 is going to be 33.3%. 2 divided by 15 is going to be 13.3%. 1 divided by 15 is going to be, I think it's going to be 6.6%, yes, or 6.7% if we round up. This one's going to give me the same answer, 6.7%, and this one's going to give me the same as here. So that's going to be 20%. Right, so how often did everything show up? That's a frequency. That's our frequency distribution. This is how what percentage of the time. So here, when somebody looks at this, they have to think a little bit. They're like, well, there were 3 1s, but that's out of a total of 15. So that's how much? Here, we know 20% of the time just by looking. Here, 1/3 of the time just by looking. You need to make sure that these add up to 100. If we add 20 to 20, we get 40. 13.3 plus 6.7 is another 20. That's 60. And those will give us 40. So those will add up to 100%, but you want to make sure that they do. If they don't, it's going to be either you did something very wrong or you rounded one of these the wrong direction. You may just have to say, like, change this to a 13.4 to make it add up to 100%. Something that's different about frequency distributions from what we've been looking at is you can use a frequency distribution for qualitative data, for non-numeric data here, and it works exactly the same way. Suppose I were to ask everybody in the class, what's your favorite color, and keep track. So red, there were 8 people that said red was their favorite color, 10 people said blue, 6 people said green. We can do the same thing, red, blue, green, yellow, and orange, and then we'd have 8 that said red, 10 that said blue, 6 that said green, 2 that said yellow, 1 that said orange. Okay, so we couldn't really do that with a stem and leaf plot, or with a dot plot. Wouldn't have been useful for this kind of data here. But when we're talking about frequency distribution, this works just as easily with qualitative data as it does with quantitative data. And next time we'll look at grouped frequency distribution.